Hello and welcome to episode 107 of the Rollo and Slappy Show. This episode will be released on September 3rd, 2018. I say that because this is another episode where we're going to record a little bit early. But I'm Rollo McFlugel, and with me is Slappy Jones 2, and we are both of McFlugel.com. The show notes page for this episode is McFlugel.com/107, where we might have some links to the things we talk about, as well as ways to subscribe to the podcast, follow us, and all that good stuff. So before we get started, I want to address something that happened in last week's episode. I asked for feedback last episode on any sort of issues that people might have, and of course, there was an issue. I recorded me in the right channel and Slappy in the left channel, and I thought that the software to do the audio editing mixed everything back to mono, but it didn't do it. So, yeah, you got that. So I'm going to play around with that right now and go between channels just to bug people a little bit. So, now I'm back to just not trying to do that. So, yeah, you get punished for a good deed, right? That's what I'm going to go with. So, yeah, check out libertymugs.com too, and buy some mugs. Tell your friends about it. Find a mug that goes against what someone you know really likes, and then just drink it very slowly in front of them
while smiling.
Yes, and maintain that eye contact.
Yes, and also go on iTunes and rate us 5 stars.
Yeah, and Stitcher,
and wherever else you want to rate us.
Yeah, that's always helpful. So, I'm going to hand it over to Slappy, and he's going to introduce our episode topic.
All right, thank you, Rollo. Welcome, everyone, to the Rollo and Slappy Show. Today, we will be talking about Bitcoin again. We did that last week when you got one of us in one ear and the other in the other ear.
Which ear was better? That's what we want to know.
That's what we want to know. But now you got us in both. I'm sure you can make some kind of joke out of that. But today we're going to talk about Bitcoin again and why we think Bitcoin will be the currency of the future. Not one of many, but the currency, and why we choose to kind of focus our energy and attention on Bitcoin. So let's get right into it, Rollo. Why is Bitcoin going to be the currency, at least in our opinion, or your opinion?
Yeah, so I think it's going to be the one and only money sometime in the future. I don't know when that will be, but because it solves all of the problems that money has to solve, and it does it in a way that nothing else compares to it. Nothing else competes to it. We haven't had good, sound, hard money in quite a long time. And even when we did, and that being gold still had some problems that it couldn't solve. And so because of that, you had other, it created some inefficiencies, which I'm sure we'll get into. But Bitcoin doesn't really have that. And so it's on this path from first being a collectible to then being a store of value, which I think we're in that phase right now, becoming a store of value, and then
Well, I'm going to push back a little bit there, or maybe we'll expand. I know you're kind of summarizing, and we'll probably go in depth more. But what do you mean by?
I was going to end the podcast right there.
Oh, really?
Yeah.
So that's it. All right.
Well, I was going to finish
Oh, all right. Well, anyway, what do you mean by a collectible, and why is that important? I mean,
when like anything else, when it first gets discovered, first gets started,
a baseball card.
Yeah, people value baseball cards, but like baseball cards, could baseball cards ever become money? I mean, you can make the case. We can imagine baseball cards becoming money, but it would be very difficult for them to get out of the collectible phase, because there's only a very small niche of people that are really going to find much value in them. Whereas I think a lot of people really would find them kind of worthless. You might be able to say, oh, well, this, Babe Ruth's rookie card in mint condition's worth blah, blah, blah dollars. And so that's really worth something. But I mean, people only know that because they know other people are going to want that. But it's not really.
Right. But I guess what I'm getting at is what's the importance of it being a collectible first?
Oh, because it needs that initial value. It needs some people assigning some to value to it, so that it kind of can have something to build off of. Because otherwise, the first people who find this kind of stuff, whatever it is, if it's Bitcoin, gold, or baseball cards, it doesn't just value just doesn't come out of thin air. It doesn't appear. It's not. People like to say some things have intrinsic value, but I disagree with anything having intrinsic value. Things can be extremely useful, but value is subjective. And there can always be something that can come around and make something obsolete.
Sure. But what about, like, I don't know which way you want to go with this episode. We didn't discuss it enough beforehand. But what about U.S. dollars? I mean, the government kind of said, here's money.
Yeah, they did. And they trash it. So the dollar has been losing value since the Federal Reserve got created.
True.
So it's a terrible store of value, and the reason it gets used is, well, one of the reasons it gets used is because you aren't allowed to use other things.
Right.
Also, it is. I mean, it is
also backed by gold originally, and they kind of slowly stole it. So it's like at one time you could exchange your U.S. dollars for gold. Then they stopped that, and then they allowed foreign governments to exchange for gold, and then they stopped that, and now it's just out of control inflation.
Right.
So they kind of did it slowly. It's not like one day they showed up and were like, "Here's U.S. dollars, everyone use them."
Mm-hmm.
I mean, at one time that money represented gold anyway.
Yep. Yeah, and let me jump back real quick because it's bothering me that I said it about the Babe Ruth rookie card that, like, oh, people would only sell it because they know other people would have value. And that would make it kind of a store of value because they know people are constantly going to demand it. But even if that were the case, and you could say that, well, Babe Ruth rookie cards are great stores of value, which I guess this is a good lead into the next phase of money. Is it a good medium of exchange? I mean, you could cut the card up into smaller pieces, but then you destroy it.
Then the value goes to essentially zero.
Right. So it would be a terrible medium of exchange. And plus, just because Babe Ruth's rookie card has a lot of value does not mean that all other baseball cards would have similar value. I mean, I think most baseball cards are, even among collectors, are kind of worthless.
Yep. I think that's true.
Because they're so plentiful. And also, because they can make so many of them. It's when they go out of, well, I guess they make them every year, but they can make as many as they want. But yeah, there's not really a good, like, monetary policy associated with that, because part of money being a good store of value is, you know, that it can't be, no one's going to flood the market with a bunch of new money that hurts the value of it. We see that with the dollar. I mean, the Federal Reserve's constantly printing more dollars, and so it harms the value of the dollars that you have. So you're losing money. Like, the more you're holding it, the longer you're holding it into the future, the less it's going to be worth, which is not very good. And so with baseball cards, yeah, the number of Babe Ruth rookie cards that can be created is already there. They can't do any more because they can't go back in time. But someone who's kind of trying to predict future values, printing baseball cards, they could print any number of, if they see a hot shot rookie coming up, they could try to print, a bajillion of them.
Right. And
so it's not you can't predict very well what I'm trying to think of the word. What the essence? That's not the right word.
Exchange rate. I mean,
not even the exchange rate, but what what the makeup of that
Demand.
currency is going to be like.
Yeah, right.
So it's that would be terrible for trying to predict that, because it's an obvious incentive. I mean, if gold were really easy to mine, then everyone would go out and do it. That's why there was the gold rush in the mid 19th century out to the West, because hey, there's gold everywhere. So that made people fly out there to try to go get it.
The other thing if baseball cards were used as money, it would be really hard to have prices.
Right.
I mean, like, is a Honus Wagner card worth 2 Babe Ruths?
Right.
You know.
And how many Babe Ruth cards would you need to have one Travis Lee card?
Yeah, Travis Lee. There's exactly. But like what we do with baseball cards now is collectors price them in dollars anyway. So
right. A lot of baseball. And, well, I mean, there's also value with putting it into the spokes of your bike.
That's what I had value in when I was a kid. Although I did collect Cal Ripken. I had a ton of them. A couple hundred of them. He was my guy.
A couple hundred Cal Ripken cards?
I did.
Well, I guess that's because he played a couple hundred years, so one for each year.
Exactly. I got one for every year he played. One for every game he played.
Yeah,
in a row, consecutive.
I remember I had my favorite one was I had a Greg Jeffries.
Greg Jeffries, nice.
From it was the Cardinals when he was on the Cardinals.
Well, he wasn't even a Phillies one, huh?
No. I don't think I had any Phillies cards.
I used to like baseball cards.
I did. I collected. I think I still have them, actually.
I probably have them at my parents' somewhere.
I just have a few.
I know I have Ripken ones there.
There's just a few that I have. I never really was into it.
All
right.
Anyway.
This was not a baseball card episode. We're not supposed to be, but... Okay. Where are we going next? Do we still have questions about store value?
Well, I was saying, why is it important that it's a collectible before it can be money? Right. So what? Like, it's a collectible that doesn't. It just.
Well, yeah, like I was saying, so you can't just. I mean, someone. Let's go to gold, since that was a better money than baseball cards could be.
Go ahead.
So, the first person that pulled gold out of the ground, I guess maybe it wasn't. Maybe the first guy that pulled gold out of the ground
thought it was a stupid rock.
Yeah, he might have said, I'm not looking for this. This isn't hard. I can't smash the guy in the cave next to me in the head with this as good as the rock that's next to it. So let me throw this away." But eventually, people started thinking that, hey, this looks pretty shiny. I can make it. I can make it into stuff. Cool. I can. Yeah. So a couple people.
Soft. I can shape it.
Yep. So a couple people found value in it, and then for whatever reason, it more and more people started finding value in it.
People started using it,
right?
Keeping it and realizing they could trade it for other things because it's a useful thing.
Well, people started wanting it,
right?
And it was difficult to get, and so because it had some uses, and someone who wanted gold couldn't just go out and walk down the path of the village and go grab as much as he wanted. It helped create value for it because it required a lot of work to go get it.
Right. So anyway, I guess we don't have this history written down, but that's just kind of the way people think it started.
I don't know, actually.
Seems to make sense.
Yeah, I mean, it makes sense. It doesn't need to. We don't need to know for sure how it happened because I think it makes logical sense.
Right.
And to argue against what we're kind of saying here would be to fight the.
Because we do know that gold was used as money, or still is in some ways.
Mm-hmm.
So people needed. There had to be. People had to want it, and then it had to be able to be divisible, and keep its integrity, still be gold when you chop it up.
Sure, you had to be able to transport it somewhat easily, move it around if you want to. So that's where it started to become a medium of exchange because it's so as time went on and it became more and more valuable, people wanted it, and people who were offering trades for stuff they only wanted gold. And so eventually you had to start giving gold to each other to get stuff, to make trades. Right. And then eventually it was and we're going through this really quickly because we'll touch on these points as we go deeper in the conversation. And eventually it was just easiest to just make everything relative to gold. To say, hey, I've got, how much is your goat worth? Well, it's worth 3 gold coins. All right. Well, how much is your hut worth? Well, my hut's worth 10 gold coins. So that becomes a unit of account, and once that happens, then it's kind of the game's. I mean, that's money. At that point, game's over. Until something else comes along and solves these problems better. But gold, I mean, there were a lot of, before gold was money, there were a lot of other monies out there in a lot of different places. There's actually I mentioned this last episode, but in Saifedean Ammous's book, The Bitcoin Standard, he goes through some of the histories of different monies and like the Rye or Ray stones and the island of Yap was, I think was it Yap? Something like that. These huge, almost like not bullet, but these huge stones they would get, and you couldn't even move it around. But it was, you would go to the town village, and when you wanted to trade it for something, you would go to the town village or town center where everyone was, and kind of announce like, I'm now trading my stone to Billy Bob down the road for his 10 goats. And because everyone heard it, that's how you like, okay, yeah, we acknowledge that now that ownership is traded, because no one could move it because it was a huge rock in the ground. So all sorts of things have been money before. But as we
what does this have to do with Bitcoin?
Bitcoin's like literally just a huge rock that you actually, it's what the foil is for it is that there was consensus on who owned it. So if you weren't, and maybe we're jumping around a little bit, but might as well say it, because it is important to Bitcoin to understand this consensus model. So all the nodes and everything, all the transactions propagate through the network, and each time a new block is set or a new block is added to the blockchain,
or announcing to everyone.
Yeah, it announces to everyone what the new ledger for everyone is, who has what Bitcoin, and that's done through consensus. So it's the most nodes, the blocks that the most nodes agree on is the next block. So if you go offline for a little bit, like say you're in the village and you go off in your boat somewhere to go catch fish, so you're not there in the town center for when Billy Bob then trades something for the stone to Suzy Q. And so you go back to the village and you hear Suzy Q saying like, yeah, that's my rock over there. And you're like, oh, I didn't know about that. Well, then you go talk to other people and say, hey, Suzy Q's claiming that rock. And people say, yeah, Billy Bob traded it for today. If you ask enough people, you're going to say, oh, okay, well, that's what the truth is. So it's the same with Bitcoin, is that if you go offline for a little bit, you catch up, you go back on and your node catches up. And it just goes with what is the consensus among people.
So what was that island called? Yap?
I think it was Yap.
They should have had a giant ledger in the center of town.
Yeah.
Okay. So you're saying...
But even still, with a ledger, someone could go edit it without...
Yeah, without all the consensus.
So you would still need
the nodes. Yeah. The nodes help keep that consensus.
Right, because someone could go make an invalid transaction or an invalid block, but you still need that consensus.
Right. So you're saying Bitcoin is in the collectible stage, past it?
I'm going off what other people are saying here.
Yeah, that's all we can do.
But yeah, right? I would say...
Anyway.
I would say it's past the collectible stage. I mean, it's appreciated in value pretty good, and I guess, I don't know, maybe since it's not, it's still fluctuating pretty good in what it's worth. It might be difficult to call it a store of value, but I mean, or I think a lot of us are anticipating that it's going to hold value, whether or not it increases by, you know, even 20% plus or minus in the next year. It goes between that. Over the next 5-10 years, we expect it to appreciate in value. And I think the fact that a lot of people are being hodlers, which we talked about in episode 106 last week a little bit, people are holding it. I mean, that's a signal that it's a store of value, because that means it means that people are really anticipating that it's going to be worth more in the future. Which is a good signal to the market. Doesn't mean they're going to be correct.
Yeah, they could be wrong.
Yeah, they could be wrong, but
so all right. But we said earlier we think Bitcoin will be the currency, the only one. So
right.
We got this collectible. People are collecting it. People are trading it.
Mm-hmm.
It happens. Probably not as much as some people would like. But it is used as money in certain areas. But why do you think there has to be one Bitcoin? Or when I say one Bitcoin, I mean only one currency, money. Yeah, yep. Only one of them is going to win is kind of what you're saying. So why?
Well, not only one cryptocurrency is going to win, only one currency. Thing is yeah. It's the dollar is going to go away, the yen's going to go away, pesos are going to go away.
Right, and why do you think that? Because right now, as it exists today, there's several monies, as you just mentioned, a couple of them.
Yes. So I am going to appeal to Gresham's law for that. And also, and just as an aside real quick, to have multiple quote-unquote monies would be barter, which is inefficient and not really that useful. But Gresham's law. So Gresham's law is often described as bad money driving out good money. But that's when, as far as my understanding of it is, that's when you have a government imposing by law a currency there.
Right,
so
because bad money would, in this case, if, say, gold was circulating with the dollar and the U.S. Federal Reserve notes, and the government is making people use Federal Reserve notes, people would hoard the gold, which would drive out the good money being the gold. Is that what you're saying?
Right, because the gold would have a lot of value.
Yes.
So people don't want to be spending that, kind of with the understanding that they have to use the dollar.
Kind of like when the U.S. Mint stopped making silver coins, they went out of circulation pretty quickly. You almost never see a silver coin today.
Exactly, because why would you trade away that if it's going to be worth the same as a non-silver quarter when you could just use silver quarters?
Back in the day, I was a little bit of a coin collector, so I have a lot of silver coins. But I still every time I get change, I check to see if they're silver. And I do this. It's 2018. The last time I got a silver coin in my change was 2006. And I don't know. I mean, I may have gotten a couple before that, but I can very clearly remember the last time I got one, and that was 12 years ago.
Yeah. Yeah. So, I mean, that's the perfect example of it. And it's because of the force of government.
Mm-hmm.
So Gresham's law, and it's sometimes referred to as Thier's law, without the government, well, this aspect of Gresham's law, without government is you don't have that mechanism to force people to use that other currency, in our case, the U.S. dollar. So what it does is the opposite kind of happens, is the good money drives out the bad money. So knowing that Bitcoin is very valuable and you expect it to have a lot more value in the future, it doesn't make sense that you want to spend it. You want to spend all of your less the thing that is going to be, it's not worth as much, and you don't expect it to be worth as much. And that drives it out eventually because people aren't going to want it anymore.
Right.
And they're going to start demanding that they only get Bitcoin. And so that's when it forces people to start using Bitcoin as the medium of exchange. But that's okay. I mean, you're going to be a lot more willing to spend Bitcoin when you can also demand it for payment to you.
Right.
So you don't, at that point, once all the bad money's getting driven out, you're not going to be really losing out as much because you can't just hold on to it anymore. And I mean, if as the bad money's getting driven out, you still need to spend stuff. So,
all right, but why couldn't Litecoin be the silver to Bitcoin being gold? Because we did have silver and gold.
Sure, and that only occurred because gold could not solve one of the problems of money is that it's not, especially as it got more valuable. You reach a point where you can't really divide it anymore. I mean, gold became so valuable that to buy, something small, you would have to like get a few gold shavings or something.
Right.
You want to buy a pack of gum, you go drink a bottle of Goldschlager and get the flakes on the bottom.
Yeah.
I mean, that's really impractical. So for smaller purchases, gold or silver has decent money properties, probably, not as good as gold, and it's worth less relative to gold. So people were able to use that for smaller purchases. But where it becomes difficult there is you can't just assign a value of silver relative to gold. I mean, it's going to fluctuate. So you're not always going to say like, well, I've got 1 ounce of gold and that's equivalent to, just making up numbers, 100 ounces of silver. The mining rates are different, so you could produce more. You can produce gold at a different rate that they're bringing silver into the market. People just value things differently. I mean, there's a bajillion aspects to it, which is why it's so difficult because it's tough to predict that. So
Bitcoin solves that problem because you can break it down to a Satoshi.
Yep, and I believe even once Lightning Network goes in, I think you can go even
lower than that.
Yes, or it has the potential to.
So if it ever got to be literally the only currency in the world, you could take it out even farther. Or break it up
that is my current understanding of it. Yes, because a lot of people are saying that eventually, a Bitcoin is going to be worth several $1 million if it becomes the world's money, and that's in like taking into account today's money. So at that was it's $1 million, and you've got 100 million satoshis in a Bitcoin. So I guess a satoshi's a penny at that point. Is my math not terrible there? And so
yeah, that's right. That is right.
Yeah. And so over time, that's not going to happen tomorrow. So you would expect that it's going to be worth more than that. Right. I think $1 million is even kind of conservative. Is extremely conservative, unrealistically conservative.
So you're guaranteeing that everyone who has Bitcoin will be a millionaire?
Yes, by like 3 weeks from now.
Okay.
So, yeah. So since Bitcoin can do that, it has no reason to have that secondary money, and all it does, all that something like Litecoin would do, would just create inefficiencies.
All right, so then here's another question though: why Bitcoin? Because we saw how the fees were back in December. Who would want to buy a pack of gum or a cup of coffee if you got to pay $20 for it?
No one.
Yeah.
But it's because it's not a medium of exchange yet. People were putting the cart before the horse, and I know it's frustrating. It's not good, but it's not ready yet. I think people take for granted how things become a store of value and how things become money. I mean, we look at gold and we just assume that, we were talking about it earlier, that you can't just assume that, people found gold and it instantly was worth something. It instantly had industrial
the first
value.
guy who found gold was, retiring.
Yeah, it didn't instantly be jewelry, especially because you pull gold out of the ground. It's not always like shiny and nice.
Right.
A lot of times it's in a gold ore. Although I'm sure when they were first finding it, it was a little bit easier.
So then another question though.
Well, I mean, we could still go
go
deeper into that. Well, actually, I lost my train of thought completely.
Well, I was going to say,
what were we talking? What was even the question?
We did have high fees. I mean, there were. And you're just saying Bitcoin wasn't ready. Okay, well, then they came out with Bitcoin Cash that has lower fees, and at least I guess there's another fork coming. Is that official?
I think so, and I think I just saw something. Apparently, Craig Wright isn't going to put replay protection in, so he wants to double spend.
Nice. But they came up with that, and to solve that problem. So why do you think that wouldn't be a better option than Bitcoin?
Well, I mean, part of it is they did that at the expense of security, and they also didn't take that opportunity to fix the malleability issue, which allowed miners to kind of cheat a little bit. Prior to that, it wasn't an issue before, and I'm not really that well brushed up on it, so I can't speak too intelligently. So if you want,
can you speak at least on the security issue? Like, why is it less secure?
Yeah, and I don't even think it matters talking about that, which I will talk about that, but yeah, at the time, okay, if you want to do that, you could do it, but coming out of it, I mean, what's the point of having these quote unquote transaction coins now? Because Bitcoin came out of it with low transactions. With the SegWit soft fork, it made it a lot cheaper. It made it and that's temporary. You still need a better scaling solution, but it kicked the can down the road enough. And now Lightning is in beta and working pretty well. I mean, Lightning's got like 3,000 nodes right now, and Bitcoin Cash is in the low 2,000. So,
really?
Yeah. I mean, it just kind of shows. And I know there's a lot of.
So is that is that the security? Like,
it's kind of part of it, but the security.
Yeah, more nodes make it more secure, more hash power.
It doesn't add hash power. It helps you check to make sure what's going on is legitimate. But the bigger security issue is raising the block size. So what the Bitcoin Cash people did, and anyone who wanted bigger blocks, was that they said, okay, with the one, you can only do 7 or 8 transactions per second with the 1 megabyte block size. So they said, okay, well, let's increase that to, what did they go to? Straight to 8 or 4? 8. I think it was 8.
I think it was 8. But that is a problem, right? I mean, 8 transactions a second.
Right.
Is a problem. You can't have a currency with only 8 transactions per second.
But you can't have a currency that has 50-something transactions per second either. I mean, that's true. That's true. I mean, we had if you're interested in this and want more into it, go to mcflugel.com/90, where we had JW Weatherman on to talk about the Bitcoin scaling issues and solutions. So that solution, just to raise the block size, was trading linear scaling for a potentially pretty significant security flaw, in that once you raise the block size, you got to transmit that data around the network. And with that comes, it becomes a larger blockchain as far as disk space goes. So it already takes a long time to spool up a full node. To make that, times 8 that it's going to do in the future from that point. I mean, it's really making it who's going to sit there for 3 months to just, making up a number to pull up run a node if you don't already have one. And on top of that, with that more data that has to go out, get transmitted throughout the network, it creates latency effects. So nodes are getting that updated information more slowly, what the new block is. So if they don't know what the new block is yet, they haven't heard it yet, they haven't been able to validate it yet, they're still waiting. That gives whoever was mining and solved that block a head start in front of everybody else, which creates some centralizing effects, because if they're getting more reward, they're
right.
Probably able to spend a little more capital to increase their mining and their hashing. And so that causes other people to drop out of the network. And so you get some mining centralization, which in and of itself isn't necessarily going to destroy Bitcoin, because they still have to, because that's what a lot of people say. The response to miner centralization is, well, why would they kind of kill the goose that lays the golden egg? If they start trying to, do funny business with it, then and Bitcoin loses value, then
then they hurt themselves.
Right. It would that's a terrible, terrible move to make, and that's true.
Yeah, I was going to say that sounds okay.
The problem is, and what makes Bitcoin so powerful and strong and so secure is that it doesn't. If you went and knocked out a miner, it wouldn't really have much an effect on the network. There's no way for you to destroy the network unless you take out the entire internet. But what happens when you have centralization with mining, it creates a door to get kicked in that, maybe a government who has super strong incentives to destroy Bitcoin would not go shut them off, because if they went and just shut off that miner, then you got all the other miners will do it. There'll be less hashing power in the network, but they'll get better rewards and be able to build it back up. But they'll be able to influence them. They'll be able to put a gun to their head and say, hey, you're going to start doing this kind of thing. And they would try to destroy Bitcoin from within.
So the more miners, the more decentralization, the less it is prone to a government attack or any one person attack.
Yeah, and I forget who said this. I don't know if it was J.W. Weatherman or it might have been Pierre Rochard. They were saying that don't think of decentralization as the goal necessarily. It's security is the goal, and decentralization is a means to that end. So I think it gets because it just kind of clouds the ideas behind it when you put decentralization in front. I mean, it's one of those things where most people, that's what they mean. They mean security, but I thought that was a good little tidbit.
Right. And so maybe I already asked this question and we got off track, or maybe already answered, but why Bitcoin? Why not one of the others? Why not focus on one of these new starts?
Yeah, so Bitcoin has already, it works. It works very well. It's very secure. And that's because it has, one of the reasons is because it has the most hashing power by far compared to anyone. So if you can find some coin with, this great software, it's got all these great ideas, but if there's not much hashing there, then it's very susceptible to go and attack that. So, I mean, I'm sure that these big miners in Bitcoin, if they wanted to, could go just absolutely destroy a lot of these coins just by directing their hashing. Now, not all of them hash with the same, algorithms and stuff. So you can't just switch your mining equipment to do whatever coin. But there's some coins that are similar that they can switch between. Or they just, outside of their equipment, just could have the money to do it. that you could sink some money into it and just and take control of the network, just because you're going to overpower everybody else there now because they're small coins that don't have big networks with a lot of hash power. So most people just don't even care about it. It's probably not even worth it to lose the reward of Bitcoin to knock these other things out that are not going to last or have an appreciable impact on Bitcoin anyway. So that's one of the. I mean, that's one of the reasons. Also, Bitcoin has a very good monetary policy, and the network has shown, the community has shown that they're not going to, change it very much. They're very resistant to change, which is good because you want that property and money. You want that. That's what gives it hardness, is that it's difficult to change, difficult to add more to the market when it's hard. And even if they hard fork it and change the rules, even if they're not going in and directly changing how many Bitcoin are going to be added to the market or added to the network, every time they hard fork or make changes to the rules that aren't backwards compatible, then it's an opportunity for them to add other stuff into it. So even though they don't do it now, the more they do it, the greater the chances that something gets thrown in there. And to be clear, I mean, Bitcoin does have inflation right now because they're sending block rewards out. That's how they're adding new Bitcoin to the network. But it's on a set schedule, and that should not be changed. And if it does ever get changed, it's going to really harm the value of Bitcoin. Apparently, I just heard that in Satoshi's original code that was run for a while, that they found a bug in it that once all 21 or slightly less than that Bitcoin get mined, that it reset it to start sending Bitcoin out again at the original thing. So they had to go back. I forget how they fixed it, but I mean, that's obviously, especially in the beginning, you're going to be finding some issues like that, but that got fixed in a good way. I mean, I think it's better to be kind of restrictive than to be opening it up, making more liberal rules, especially for critical parameters to it like that, like the supply. Hopefully there's no more issues like that.
Well, all right, then how long we been going? You getting close to an hour?
Or 43 minutes.
All right. Well, you say you're Bitcoin maximalist. Why not? So I mean, what that means to me is you're focusing all your time. You got out of altcoins. You're getting into Bitcoin. You're staying in Bitcoin. You're focusing on Bitcoin. Why do you think that's important?
Well, because getting involved in the other coins, it just kind of slows Bitcoin down. I mean, we want to have as much hashing power directed at Bitcoin as possible because it makes it more secure. Makes it more difficult for a government to try to take out. Every day that Bitcoin exists gives it a better chance of surviving in the future. So we want to accelerate that as much as possible. And on top of just the fact that Bitcoin has the most hashing power and is the most secure coin out there, a lot of these other things don't offer any better solutions. And some of them are just terrible. Like Ethereum is, I know a lot of people like it, but its monetary policy is atrocious. They have no plans to make it, as far as I know, there's no plans to make it actually hard. They're going to continue to inflate it indefinitely.
Forever, right.
What
about Monero? Privacy coins.
Yeah, as far as I mean, I haven't dug deep into that, but from what I've heard, it doesn't scale at all. So, what good is that as making it the world's money if you can't onboard,
Right.
except for only a few people. Also, it was interesting that apparently that got started. That was a scam. It was literally a scam until other people took over the project. But
yeah, it's interesting.
Yeah.
So what other words you got on Bitcoin maximalization? What did we miss?
Yeah, one thing I wanted to say, because I think we didn't talk. I think we were talking about this before we recorded, but if we already said this, let me know. But I think one of the things that kind of confuses when the medium of exchange should happen as opposed to the store of value is, one, we're kind of talking about it, how we don't really give much appreciation for the time it took for gold to become a store of value. We just kind of assume that it has a lot of uses outside of money currently that it just did. And so we can associate some value with gold outside of just being a money, which helps hold its value, which helps make it be a store of value. But there's no reason to say that Bitcoin just doesn't have value because it serves as a great money. I mean, money is an extremely important thing. So I don't understand why it doesn't make sense to be able to say, well, its only job is to be really good at money. And I think that's extremely valuable. And sure. I think what also kind of clouds this understanding of being a store of value to medium of exchange is that in order for Bitcoin to even work, it's different. It's different than any other, money we've had before, and they've had attempts at making electronic money like this. But with gold, for it to be a medium of exchange, you just trade it with someone. You physically hold it so you can trade it with people. But in order for Bitcoin to work, that medium of exchange, that payment system, which gives it the opportunity to be a medium of exchange, was built into it, and you needed that. Once Satoshi Nakamoto flipped on that software and started running Bitcoin, and other people got on. I mean, you needed to be able to send it back and forth because it's a digital thing. You can't, right, unless you're like, moving computers. Hey, I guess this is on my hard drive, so let me give you my computer that has all my Bitcoin on it. It would be completely impractical and not really worth much if it couldn't be sent back, if it didn't have that built-in payment system.
Right.
So because that payment system was there and people were using it, and people were able to use that payment system without paying for transactions because the block reward was so large compared to, it was big enough that you didn't need to sweeten the deal with adding transaction fees. Also because there just wasn't a demand for it, so they probably weren't really filling the block. So there's no reason to have to bid higher than the other guy to make sure you weren't stuck in the mempool and you got in the next block. So it created this idea that Bitcoin was instantly this great medium of exchange because transactions were fast and cheap and free and everything else. So I think that's a point that that helps it. It kind of it was a premature thing that just was the nature of it. I don't know how you would get around that. So it just kind of maybe.
I mean, you couldn't have the coin without it.
Right. I hope what I was saying there kind of made sense.
Yeah,
because it was just not something I've been thinking. I think that popped in my head the other day.
And people are impatient. I get that. I was impatient.
Oh yeah, I mean, we all want it to be worth $1 bajillion per Bitcoin, and we all want the Lightning Network to work without any sort of hitches. But it
takes time. It's got to be done right.
Yep.
You don't want bugs that would kill it.
Exactly. Another thing I wanted to say about the because when you talk about other coins being still having Bitcoin maybe being the best money out of a bunch of cryptocurrencies, people bring up atomic swaps, which is you can, instead of trading coins on like a centralized exchange, you can have this software where it says, hey, I want to trade. I want
Litecoin for Monero.
Yeah, or Bitcoin for Tractor Coin.
That's where you got it in.
Yep. Oh yeah.
I was going to ask if this ends the Tractor Coin project.
Well, no, because I do believe that Tractor Coin will be better than Bitcoin.
Okay. Fair enough.
Yep. So
you're a Tractor Coin maximalist.
Yes.
Okay.
Actually, Tractor Coin is the real Bitcoin.
Gotcha.
So there it is. You said you weren't going to throw me off.
I did.
I forget what I was saying. Oh, atomic swaps. Yeah. So again, like I kind of mentioned before, that just creates a barter system. But on top of that, if Bitcoin's like really the kind of the base, and you need like to go to this to buy milk, you need milk coin, and to go fill up your car with gas, you need gas coin. No one would want to really hold on to any of these other ancillary coins for any longer than they absolutely had to. So when you went to buy milk, you would trade your Bitcoin for milk coin, buy your milk. It doesn't make much sense to be holding on to milk coin and gas coin and everything else, because you don't have good
there's nowhere else to use it.
Yeah. Again, it's a barter system, and the other problem with that,
it's like Chuck E. Cheese coins.
Yeah. I mean, you can't use Chuck E. Cheese coins to go buy milk. Yeah, you can only use it there.
Exchange your dollars, get your coins, play your games, and then leave. And I mean, I guess get rid of your coins if you can, or whatever. But they're useless when they're not at Chuck E. Cheese.
Yeah, I mean, if someone was if you came out of a Chuck E. Cheese with a bag full of coins, and someone offered you money for it, you would absolutely, unless you're a real Chuck E. Cheese coin collector, you're gonna make that trade. You don't want to hold it. So, but the other problem is, and this is probably the bigger dagger for that, is that's assuming that there's going to be a lot of liquidity between these markets.
Right.
Especially when we look back in Gresham's law, where that bad money is going to get driven out. There's that whole system, the whole atomic swap thing, has to rely on people having these random coins that you're going to have, be able to trade at will.
Yeah, you don't want to wait a couple days when you're trying to buy milk.
Yeah, and it just creates this unnecessary
extra transaction that doesn't need to be there.
And it slows it down. It creates inefficiencies. It's just not, and it's probably not going to be very liquid. So,
plus for accounting purposes, you want one coin.
Oh, it would be a nightmare.
Like
it would be an absolute
or to value anything. If you're doing your company in milk coin and the other company in Bitcoin, and you want to buy one of them, you have to try. You're trading things back and forth. It would be a nightmare.
Yep. Yeah, and I think that was like, I guess I remember this was years ago, but I think it's part of this. People get a little too excited about the blockchain and what it can do, and because the blockchain is immutable and you can actually prove ownership, that I think people want to apply it to more than they really have to, because databases are great and they work fine.
So you like Ethereum?
You mean Ripple?
Ripple, yeah. That's Ethereum, yeah. Ripple.
And they work great for many, many, many applications.
Still are.
Yeah. And they're efficient. They're fast. Bitcoin is extremely inefficient for good reason. because you want to be able to prove that work that you did. So yeah, I think that was part of it. So I remember this Bitcoin meetup I used to go to, and people were talking about, oh, we could have these like reputation coins. They were just tokenizing everything, and it just doesn't make much sense. It just creates like, well, how would you even supply the network to run this stuff? You're just kind of, I mean, what value do these coins actually have? Why would anyone direct their energy to support that? So
right.
A lot of, I mean, it's based on good intentions.
So if the end game is Bitcoin, we might as well jump in now and keep going and make this thing work.
Yeah, I mean, unless something drastic changes that it shows that it can't. But there's nothing.
It's the most secure.
Yeah, nothing really that you could, honestly say, looking at it, that's going to cause major problems. I know there's criticisms of it. To just be blunt, I don't think they're good, or major criticisms that would cause it to fail as being a money. Or at least right now, there's. I'll put it this way. I think this is a much fairer way of saying it. There's nothing else that looks like it has a better chance than Bitcoin is doing it. And so until that changes,
you're Bitcoin.
You have to.
Right. No, it makes sense to me.
So, I think that's all I had that I want to talk about.
Yeah. Anything with the free market?
Yeah, I kind of wanted to change this up a little bit.
What? See who's making the timeline weird?
No.
Okay.
No, kind of. Well, change it up as doing an anti-free market success story.
Okay. What did the government do well?
Yeah. Well, it's not even. So I don't even know. I don't even know if it's qualified. You know what? It's just I want to complain about something I saw on Twitter tonight.
Okay.
So it's I don't know if it's all over the country, but especially around this area, the past week we've had a heat wave. It's like every day it's been at least 100 degrees. Heat index is like 120. It's absurd. It's going to happen again tomorrow. Friday we're going to get some rain. It's going to drop the temperature by a lot. And nowadays, schools in this area and around other places are going back a lot earlier. So, I mean, it's right. What are we recording? August 29th. So, I mean, back when I was going to school, we didn't go back until after Labor Day. Yeah, back in my day, we didn't go back to school until after Labor Day. So, the first week or two of September, you could still have a chance of being hot. But I mean, August is August. It's a hot month. So, in particular, I saw this tweet. I hope my battery doesn't die between now and then. So let me pull it up. So people are talking about how schools are getting let out earlier. I think some might even be canceling class over these couple days because of how hot it is. And people are bringing up, back in my day, we didn't get all days off because it was too hot out or whatever. So here's one tweet in particular. I think he deleted it because he got a little roast on it. The kids in my boys' school are allowed to have water bottles in class because apparently they can't wait to just use the water fountain at scheduled breaks. SMH. That is the most boomerific tweet that I think I've ever seen.
The school did him well.
Yeah. I mean, it's bad that kids are getting hydrated? And I think he clarified a little then. He's like, well, because someone's like, man, there's school. Because I know when I went to school, we didn't have air conditioning. And we didn't have ceiling fans until when I was close to getting out.
How was the walk to school? Was it uphill both ways?
It was 90 degrees.
90 degrees.
Straight up in the air both ways.
Yep.
We had 2 fans in the classroom. usually. One in the front, one in the back, the little like oscillating fans, and it didn't do anything. It wasn't fun. It wasn't good. And I remember it was the only time you really got a chance to get any sort of drink was during lunch. Mm-hmm. I mean, there was like morning recess or something that you would, you could line up and go to the bathroom. But, being at the water fountain line was terrible. If you took more than 3 seconds there, everyone would start complaining, be like, "Oh, save some for the whales." And I don't know what this guy's kid's school is like. He said like, "Oh, they get scheduled breaks and they do all this stuff, blah 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 blah." But why would, just because I went, and it wasn't good. I've thought about this recently because I've been hearing people complain about schools being too soft on this kind of stuff, but that's not good. I mean, staying hydrated is extremely important. And so, like, if I have kids, I wouldn't want them to have to go through that. Not that I was like suffering, but I remember it wasn't fun being thirsty all day. Obviously I survived, but why would I wish that upon my kids? And apparently with this guy, he's trying to say that the kids are getting treated softer than he was, and it's so terrible and everything. So it's funny that, he's a, Mr. Charlie Conservative. It's funny how schools go with a lot of these people. He'll complain that the leftists or something. I'm sure I'm putting words in his mouth, but, I'd be willing to wager a bet on this. I'm sure he's complaining about Common Core and all these other stupid things that these people want to do to brainwash kids in school and turn them into drones. But meanwhile, this guy wants to brainwash kids into following stupid arbitrary rules about whether or not you're allowed to bring water in the classroom. Why? So they could be stupid drones to grow up, to just follow these dumb arbitrary rules. And on top of that, they're punishing kids for saying like, hey, for planning ahead. Because what happens now is that if little Johnny says, hey, it's going to be really hot in school today, I should bring a water bottle, and so I can make sure, I drink water and stay hydrated. No, he gets punished for that. So you're punishing these kids for like thinking ahead and taking care of themselves so that they have to just, I know I'm ranting and getting upset over like one dumb tweet, but a lot of people think this way. And it's absolutely just asinine to do that. It's stupid. Why does it matter? Why does it matter if kids have water bottles next to them in class?
Really,
because
then they're not getting up and leaving the classroom to go to the water fountain when they, it's better for kids to be out of class as much as possible.
I'm sure that was his angle.
That's why it's a problem to have water bottles at your desk, because then your kid has to sit there and listen to whatever the teacher's talking about.
Yeah, I don't know if they would say, "Oh, he's going to get distracted." Well, I don't know. I remember in class there were kids that were going to pay attention and kids that weren't going to pay attention, and it didn't matter if the kids that had a water bottle in front of them or had their pencil in front of them.
Yeah,
they're going to play around with it.
Episode because school sucks.
Do you know what we should do? And I was thinking about this. We should see if Matt Erpelding would come on.
Yeah,
because he does the experimental education stuff.
Yes, he does.
And we told him in that episode we wanted to talk about that. So
yeah, we could bring him on.
Bring him to the foreground.
Yeah, let's do it.
So
I'm sure that guy was just having a bad day and like heard like 10 things that people were just being way too soft for his kids and just decided to tweet the wrong one.
Maybe.
And then he got the wrath of Rollo.
Yeah. It's just, but even if that was the case, there's because I used to think that way, and there's no good reason to think that way. To think that we have to assign stupid arbitrary rules that actually can be directly harmful to them, just because you want them to be like, well, they need discipline. Okay, no one's saying that people, maybe don't need, you can't just like give them every,
Well, if I ever thought that way, I changed my mind real quick. In high school playing football, we got our breaks here and there for water, and you'd be like dying in between breaks. Then in college, there were managers there with water bottles. You get water whenever you want, and that was really nice.
Yeah.
So,
Well, it was a lower level of football in college, though, right?
than high school, yes,
Yeah.
definitely. They were very soft. We were all soft.
Yeah, because you got water breaks all the time. Water on demand.
Right.
It just softened you up so much.
That is correct. So anyway, you got anything else to add?
No, just that I
Any
didn't
more
play
tweets
football in college. That makes me tougher than you, right? Because I didn't get the water
breaks.
No, I didn't.
Whenever you wanted.
Yeah.
See, that's the problem. It actually took out the water break because now you don't get a break. You have water all the time.
Yeah. So yeah, I didn't have the privilege of having someone chase me around with water bottles. Did you even have to spray it in your own mouth?
No.
Oh man.
I mean, you could if you wanted, but you didn't have.
Yeah,
to.
but yeah, you had the option. I mean, man.
Yeah.
And was it always just water, or was there maybe some Gatorade in there too, every once in a while?
During practice, it was always water.
Okay. What about?
But we had, you get as much Gatorade as you wanted.
Man.
It's good
Living
stuff.
a life.
Good times.
It was easy, man.
Yeah,
Football sounds so easy.
it is.
All right. Show notes page, again, is mcflugel.com/107. I may link to some podcasts that I like on Bitcoin. JW Weatherman puts on a great show. I've been listening to this Stefan Livera podcast. He's kind of new, and it's just he's a guest on every episode, and it's just fantastic. And then I'll probably put a couple books. I'm staring at it. Mastering Bitcoin.
Yeah.
Well, yeah, it's Saifedean Ammous's book, The Bitcoin Standard. I'm reading that right now. It's very good. Just read through Mastering Bitcoin by Andreas Antonopoulos. So that's more of the technical side for understanding how it all works, and he does a great job of explaining it. That you can not really understand programming and code too much, and you'll be able to get most of it. Saifedean's book is more an economics book, talking about how money works and why Bitcoin is, the best money. So maybe once I'm done that book, we can kind of revisit this, because I'm sure it'll be somewhat controversial, and we welcome any and all feedback on this. So if you don't agree with us, let us know.
Yeah, seriously, we don't care.
Or it might have been choppy at some point. So if you want clarification, be happy to do it. I'll probably take some of these ideas and write about it too. So I think it's very interesting.
And I'm going to read those books as well, which I haven't done yet.
Yeah,
but I do own them.
Well, maybe you can join a football team and someone will read it for you while they spray water in your mouth.
I didn't get that.
Yeah.
But I also can't run anymore.
Yeah. Well, you could be a kicker.
Yeah, there we go.
So on the show notes page, we'll also find the links to subscribe to us, iTunes, Stitcher, or on Podbean, on YouTube as well. Make sure you give us a nice 5-star rating in there if you like it. And make sure you share us with your friends. You can find us on Facebook and Twitter. What am I missing? Oh, our friends. We've got the... I thought you were going to say something.
No, I was just laughing because, friends. We got them.
We don't get invited to parties, though.
No.
We got Mance Raider with the Free Man Beyond the Wall podcast. Friends Against Government podcast with Car Campit and Bird Archist. Peaceful Treason podcast, where Bird was just talking about some cryptocurrency stuff with those guys that I just listened to today. It was a very good episode. They talk about intellectual property and debate about voting as well. So go give that a listen. And then Dino Files. And I think that about wraps us up. Thanks for listening. Yeah. We'll catch you next week.
Peace.